He stood on the corner, hands in his pockets, just waiting for a friend, when the flashing lights of a police cruiser cut through the evening haze. Within moments he was face down on the pavement, a knee pressed into his back as bystanders pulled out their phones, capturing every second of the chaos. The air crackled with shouts, his pleas, the officer's commands, and the crowd's outrage, each voice colliding in a storm of tension that would soon ripple far beyond that city street. Where were you when you saw this unfold? Were you in New York, London, Chicago, or Manchester? Drop your city in the comments below and share how this moment hit you. He was Marcus Tate, a 32-year-old mechanic from Philadelphia, standing outside a corner store on a warm July evening in 2024. Marcus had just finished a long shift at the auto shop, his hands still faintly stained with grease, his navy work shirt slightly untucked. He was waiting for his friend Jamal, who was running late, as usual. The street was alive with the usual hum of the neighborhood, kids laughing, cars rolling by, and the faint pulse of music from a nearby bar. Marcus checked his phone, scrolling through messages, unaware of the police cruiser slowing down at the intersection. They, the officers, were a pair from the local precinct. Officer Daniel Harper, a 15-year veteran with a reputation for being strict but fair, and Officer Sarah Klein, a newer recruit, barely 2 years on the force. Their patrol had been routine that evening, responding to minor calls about noise complaints and a shoplifting incident a few blocks away. But a call had just come over the radio, a vague report of a suspicious individual near the corner store, described only as a black male in a dark shirt. The description was thin, but Harper, behind the wheel, turned toward the store, his eyes scanning the sidewalk. Marcus didn't notice the cruiser at first. He was texting Jamal, joking about his tardiness when the cruiser's lights flicked on, casting red and blue shadows across the storefront. Harper stepped out, his hand resting lightly on his holster while Klein followed, her posture tense but alert. The crowd on the street, shoppers, passers-by, a few teens on bikes, began to pause, sensing the shift in the air. "Sir, step away from the wall and keep your hands where I can see them," Harper called out, his voice firm but not yet hostile. Marcus looked up, startled, his phone still in hand. "Me?" he asked, his tone more confused than confrontational. He raised his hands slightly, the phone glinting in the streetlight. "I'm just waiting for someone." Harper's eyes narrowed. "Put the phone down and step forward, now." His voice carried an edge, the kind that comes from years of expecting compliance. Marcus hesitated, his brow furrowing. "Officer, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just standing here." Klein moved closer, her hand hovering near her taser. "Do what he says," she added, her voice sharper, betraying her inexperience. The crowd was growing now, phones out, recording. A woman in a red jacket shouted, "He's not doing nothing. Let him be." Her voice drew others, and soon a chorus of murmurs and yells began to build. Marcus set his phone on the ground, slowly, his hands raised higher now. Okay, I'm complying," he said, his voice steady but laced with frustration. He took a step forward, as instructed, but Harper moved quickly, closing the distance. "Turn around, hands behind your back," Harper ordered. "Why am I being detained?" Marcus asked, his voice rising slightly. "You haven't told me what I did." He turned as asked, but his question hung in the air, unanswered. Harper grabbed Marcus's wrist, twisting it behind his back with a practiced motion. The move was swift, almost mechanical, but to the crowd it looked aggressive. Someone yelled, "Yo, that's too rough." Another voice, louder, "Get off him." Klein scanned the crowd, her hand now on her taser. "Back up, everyone, stay back," she shouted, her voice cracking under the pressure. Marcus winced as Harper's grip tightened. "Officer, I'm not resisting," he said, his voice strained. "Just tell me what's going on." The radio crackled with the vague report against a suspicious individual, possible weapon. Harper, hearing it, pressed his knee into Marcus's back, forcing him to the ground. Marcus grunted as his chest hit the pavement, his cheek scraping against the rough surface. "Stay down," Harper barked, his knee holding firm. The crowd erupted. "He's not armed," a man shouted, holding his phone high, the camera rolling. "You're choking him," a woman screamed, though Marcus could still breathe, his protests muffled but clear. "I'm not resisting," he repeated, his voice steady despite the weight on his back. "I just want to know why." Harper's face was unreadable, his focus split between Marcus and the growing crowd. Klein, now visibly rattled, kept shouting for people to stay back, her hand trembling slightly. The tension was a powder keg, every shout, every movement, threatening to ignite something bigger. A teen in the crowd threw an empty water bottle, which bounced harmlessly near Klein's feet. Her eyes widened and she reached for her taser, but Harper shot her a look. "Don't," he said sharply. Marcus, still pinned, spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "I'm a mechanic. I live 2 blocks from here. I'm not a threat." His words were meant for Harper, but they carried to the crowd, fueling their anger. "Let him up," someone yelled. "This is bullshit," another voice added. The officer's radio crackled again, this time with a clarification. The suspicious individual was reported at a different corner, a block away, wearing a hoodie, not a work shirt. Harper's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. "We're sorting this out," he said, his voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. But to Marcus, still on the ground, it sounded like an excuse. The standoff stretched on, each second captured by a dozen phones. The crowd was now a mix of fury and fear, some shouting at the officers, others pleading for calm. A woman named Tanya, a local shop owner, pushed to the front, her voice cutting through the noise. "Officer, you've got the wrong guy. He's Marcus. He fixes my car. Let him up." Harper's knee eased slightly, but he kept Marcus pinned. "We're following protocol," he said, his tone defensive now. Klein, still scanning the crowd, looked to Harper for guidance, her inexperience showing in her wide eyes. The radio crackled again, this time with a supervisor's voice. "Harper, Klein, stand down. Wrong suspect." Marcus heard it, his face still pressed to the ground. "You heard that," he said, his voice steady but laced with anger. "Wrong guy, let me up." Harper hesitated, his training warring with the moment. The crowd's shouts grew louder, a chaotic mix of demands and insults. Someone threw another bottle, this time closer, and Klein flinched, her hand twitching toward her taser again. Tanya stepped closer, her phone out now, streaming live. "This is on Facebook, YouTube, everywhere," she shouted. "The whole world's watching you." The weight of those words hit Harper, and he finally eased his knee off Marcus's back, pulling him to his feet. Marcus's shirt was torn at the shoulder, his cheek scraped and bleeding slightly. He stood, hands still raised, his eyes locked on Harper's. "You good?" Harper asked, his voice low, almost mechanical. Marcus didn't answer, his gaze steady, defiant. The crowd was still shouting, some cheering that Marcus was up, others demanding Harper's badge number. Klein, visibly shaken, stepped back, her hand finally off her taser. The supervisor, Lieutenant Ramirez, arrived on the scene, his presence calming the crowd slightly. He spoke quickly to Harper and Klein, his voice too low for most to hear, but his gestures were clear. "De-escalate, now." Ramirez approached Marcus, his tone professional but apologetic. "Sir, I'm sorry for the mix-up. You're free to go." Marcus didn't move at first, his eyes still on Harper. "A mix-up," he said, his voice low but carrying a weight that silenced the crowd for a moment. "You had me on the ground for nothing. You didn't even ask my name." The crowd murmured in agreement, phones still rolling, capturing every word. Ramirez raised a hand, trying to keep the peace. "We're reviewing the call," he said. "This shouldn't have happened." But Marcus shook his head, his voice rising now. "Shouldn't have happened. I was just standing here. I'm a citizen, same as you, same as him." He pointed at Harper, who looked away, his jaw tight. The crowd's energy surged again, some chanting Marcus's name, others shouting at the officers. Tanya, still streaming, narrated the scene. "This is what happens in our neighborhood. This is what we deal with every day." Her words, amplified by the internet, were already spreading, the video racking up views by the second. Harper and Klein retreated to their cruiser, Ramirez staying behind to manage the crowd. Marcus picked up his phone from the ground, its screen cracked but still working. He looked at it, then at the crowd, then back at Ramirez. "This isn't over," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "You can't just walk away from this." As the officers drove off, the crowd stayed, some comforting Marcus, others still filming, their anger now mixed with a sense of solidarity. Marcus, still shaken but composed, spoke to Tanya's camera. "I'm not a criminal. I'm a father, a worker, a neighbor. This isn't just about me. This is about all of us." His words, raw and unscripted, hit hard, spreading across social media like wildfire. By the next morning, the video had millions of views, sparking protests in Philadelphia and beyond. Harper and Klein were placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation. Marcus, now at the center of a movement he didn't ask for, met with community leaders, his story fueling demands for reform. But the twist came later that day, when another video surfaced, not from the crowd, but from a store's security camera. It showed Harper hesitating before approaching Marcus, his hand lingering on his holster, his eyes scanning the street as if unsure. The footage suggested he knew the call was vague, yet he acted anyway, a detail that shifted the narrative from mistake to negligence. The city erupted in debate, some defending Harper's split second decision, others condemning his rush to judgment. Marcus, meanwhile, refused to stay silent. He filed a formal complaint, backed by the community, and began speaking at rallies, his voice growing stronger with each appearance. "This isn't just my story," he said at one event, his words broadcast live. "It's our story, and we're not done telling it. Where are you watching this from? Philadelphia, London, Atlanta, or somewhere else? Share your city and your thoughts below. How does this moment make you feel, and what will you do about it? Join the conversation, because this story isn't over.